Ferrari entered Sunday's Monaco Grand Prix in a very strong position after locking out the front row of the grid as hometown hero Charles Leclerc chased his first victory around the Monaco streets. But it wasn't to be. Ferrari ended up throwing away the race win, and it was Sergio Perez who scooped glory for Red Bull. But just how did Ferrari fail to convert its 1-2 qualifying result into the race victory here in Monaco? My name is Luke Smith, and this is Paddock Packdown. Welcome to the Monaco paddock. You can hear the parties are ongoing, but it is Red Bull who will be partying hardest tonight after a fourth win in a row. And for Ferrari, that means its run of not winning races has continued, unfortunately. But for Ferrari, I think they really have got to do some soul searching and find out just how they didn't win this race. It was a very bitter defeat, very narrow defeat. So let's take a look at some of the factors behind Sergio Perez's victory and how Ferrari didn't win in Monaco today. Now, the rain in the build-up to lights out did delay the start, but once it got going, Charles Leclerc was able to build a couple of seconds lead over the field and looks in pretty good shape. Ferrari were dealing with the wet weather very, very well. But then came the real challenge for the drivers about when to make the switch from the wet tyres to the intermediates, or whether just stick it out and try and go all the way until the slicks came into play. Now, this is a tactic that Lewis Hamilton used very well in 2016 to win the Monaco Grand Prix, so it's something that's been seen a lot of times before. And Ferrari, they decided to split their strategies. They brought Charles Leclerc in for those set of intermediates, decided to keep Carlos Sainz out. But it was Sergio Perez who was the first of everyone to come into the pits for those intermediate tyres at the end of lap 16. Now, this was a crucial point for Perez getting the undercut on Leclerc and winning this race. Now, Perez's outlap was pretty quick. He managed to cut a bit of time out of Charles Leclerc, who was still on the full wet tyres at that point. But it was the next lap where Leclerc was coming into the pits that Perez was really able to make up a huge amount of time. Leclerc's lap was a 1:32. Perez's was a 1:25. So that 7-second swing was absolutely huge. And in the end, it meant that Leclerc came out of the pits behind Sergio Perez, knowing that his chance of winning his home race had taken a significant blow. So that was, I think, really the first big factor that put Leclerc out of the lead fight and put Perez on course to victory in Monaco. And from there, things went from bad to worse for Charles Leclerc. He had 2 pit stops in the space of 4 laps, because as he'd already been onto the intermediate tyre, he then needed to get onto the slick, so he had to come in once again. By this point, he was obviously behind Carlos Sainz, who'd been kept out all the way by Ferrari, and it meant that Ferrari were forced into double stacking the drivers in the pits, which again cost Leclerc time as he waited behind Sainz. Now, it wasn't the first communication that Ferrari have had this weekend. We saw in practice when Mick Schumacher blocked the pit lane. The pit entry was obviously closed because there was a car across it. Charles Leclerc over the radio, he was told pit lane closed, box, box, which obviously are 2 very contradictory statements. And I think it just speaks to Ferrari. There's a few errors slipping in here and there. Max Verstappen, he spoke after the race, said how Red Bull had been absolutely on it all weekend. Very smooth, very, very calm. And I think for Leclerc and Ferrari, they need to go away and really review what happened this weekend. Leclerc said there have been a lot of mistakes this weekend. They do need to learn from that. But I think the communication errors and the 2 pit stops in the space of 4 laps, that is what really meant that Leclerc didn't stand a chance of winning this race. After the race on the radio, he said he had no words to sum up his defeat. A real bitter result for him. He would have loved so dearly to have won his home Grand Prix. But today, it just simply was not to be. So with Leclerc out of the picture, it meant it was all down to Carlos Sainz to try and win this race for Ferrari. Now, he was actually in a really good position. He committed quite early on to wanting to stay out on the wets and not go on to the intermediates. He wanted to go all the way until the track was dry enough for slicks. We saw it was quite a quick drying phase. We saw that, Leclerc was proof of that, pitting twice in the space of 4 laps. He had to get onto that slick tyre. But by the time that Sainz had come in, the damage had already been done. On his in-lap, he actually got stuck behind Nicholas Latifi, and that cost him a lot of time. We know how hard it is to overtake around Monaco, and even with blue flags for back markers getting out of the way, it's really tricky for them. Now, that time lost for Sainz, he was already on the wet tyre compared to Perez on the intermediate, so that in itself cost him a lot of time. But then when you're toiling behind another car in front that's so slow, you really don't stand much chance. So it meant that when he did come out of the pits, he was already behind Perez, and we saw what fine margins there were at the end of the race. And I think for Sainz, it was, a very bitter pill to swallow. He's been so close to fighting for victories. Obviously, he came so close at Monza, obviously in 2020 for McLaren. He wants that breakthrough for Ferrari, and today was so nearly his day. But in the end, it was second place for Carlos Sainz in Monaco. But there's still a lot of soul searching and still a lot of answers that Ferrari need from this weekend. I think that the pace of the car has undeniably been very good. After a few weekends of Red Bull appearing to have the quickest package we saw in Spain, Ferrari took that massive step forward. Leclerc was on course to win that race until the power unit issue that took it away from him. ended up with the Red Bull 1-2. And then it's a similar kind of story here. Ferrari had all the cards stacked in their favour, a really, really good chance today, and then to come away with a second and a fourth place finish, it's not what they would have wanted. Red Bull have got a lot of momentum right now, 4 wins on the bounce, and now Perez as well, kind of coming into the title picture. He's only 15 points off Verstappen at the front, 6 points off Leclerc in second, so it's shaping up as a little three-way fight at the front there. But I think Ferrari know they need to break Red Bull's momentum very, very soon, otherwise it's going to be quite hard to beat them in this year's championship.